Are you struggling to keep learners engaged while teaching online? Well, I'm going to teach you how to increase learner engagement and motivation using the acronym TARGET coming up in this video. Hi there, I'm MB, and you've landed in the universe of learning with MB, where every week I release videos to help you master the science of educational content creation. There are more videos just like this one that cover tips, tools, and tutorials that help you become a better instructional designer and create awesome learning experiences. So if you're new here, consider subscribing, and if you like what you see here, hit that like button. Let's get started. Learning engagement is no joke. Our learners are super distracted and pulled in many different directions. And there's so many competing demands on our learners these days. And the cell phones in their pockets are engineered to be distracting, and they're engineered to keep them engaged in long-term activities. So our job as instructional designers is to design learning experiences that engages them just as much. There's so much science that says that our attention spans have shortened. But if you've ever binged watched a television show or binged watched TV, then you can't tell me that our attention spans have shortened because you've been engaged for a long period of time. So why can't we do the same thing with our learning experiences and with our online education? So with the acronym TARGET, TARGET, spelled that right? With the acronym TARGET, you can start to formulate and design that learning experience in a way that uses science and uses a little bit of art and uses a little bit of learning design to create an experience that keeps your learners engaged for the long term. So let's dive into TARGET and how you can start to create those learning experiences so that your learners stay engaged and motivated to continue learning with you. Before you do anything, you want to make sure that you know who your learner is. So let's assume that you've done a learner analysis, you know who your audience is, you know their prerequisite knowledge, and you have a strong understanding of your learner. So let's assume that's out of the way. Let's take a look at the acronym TARGET. The T in TARGET stands for task. The task aspect of TARGET is the learning activities that influence student motivation and cognition. So you're looking to design activities and tasks that the learners do that keep them engaged over the long term. So let's dive into that for a second. Does the task highlight any specific long-term or short-term goals? So you need to be really clear on what the objective is of your learning. What do you need the learners to be able to do as a result of your education? If you're not clear on the objectives of your learning or of your online education, then you're not going to be clear on the tasks that they need to do. So relevancy is really super important here. In addition to just connecting the specific task to the learning objective, you want to make sure that there's diversity and variety in your tasks. If you're just doing the same type of task over and over again, specifically like role play or just asking questions, then you're going to start to bore your learner and your learner's going to stop being motivated. Get creative with your tasks. Get creative with your group activities or individual activities or games. Gamification is huge. Things like that will help your learner stay engaged over the course of your education or even your online course. Something else to consider when you're thinking about the tasks that you're having your learner do is the level of the task. Having the tasks be too easy will disengage your learner. Having them be too hard will also disengage your learner. That's why when I say making sure you understand your learner and doing a learner analysis is super important. Making sure you understand their level coming into your education is super important because you want that task to be just challenging enough where they improve, but not overly challenging where they disengage. The A in the TARGET model is autonomy. And this is the opportunity for your learners to gain a sense of control and independence over the activities and the skills that they are acquiring during their education. And that sounds a bit like a mouthful, but really it's just giving the learners an opportunity to make decisions over their own learning journey. A way that you can provide autonomy to your learners is different ways for them to participate. Can they control the pace of the learning? Can they control the ways in which they engage? Can they choose the groups? Can they choose, how long a project will take them? Some learners take longer to complete a task, whereas others move more quickly. Can you give them more opportunities to engage in different ways where they can choose? Maybe one would prefer to write a report versus one would prefer to give a presentation, but both would give you an opportunity to check for learning. Can you give them a choice in that aspect and more control over how they show their skills back to you? The R in target is recognition, and it's by far one of my favorite aspects of recognition because I'm a huge fan of Carol Dweck and her work with growth mindset, and I'll link the book below. So if you're not familiar with growth mindset, you can take a look at it. Growth mindset is essentially the belief that you can change and you can grow, whereas a fixed mindset means that you believe that your traits are fixed. When you're thinking about praise and recognition and rewards in your classroom, you want them to be motivated, and the use of intrinsic and external motivation. And the scope of this video won't go into all of that, but you do want to use some of that in your classroom, and I highly recommend using growth-minded recognition and feedback. But also extrinsic motivation works very well, using rewards, badges, and external prizes. People are super competitive, and that could keep your learners super engaged throughout the course of your learning and the course of the workshop or online education. The G in target stands for grouping, and this relates to social learning and how your learners relate to others. And it's super important that we have a sense of belonging when it comes to our learning experiences. And this is a big downfall or a big challenge that we have in the online learning community because we're so separated. In live workshops or in-person workshops, it's very easy to have a sense of belonging and work in small groups and feel like you are there with them. So I really urge you to think about the design of your online workshops and how you're bringing people together. The other portion of grouping is also a sense of collaboration. The skills that are needed to collaborate and work in a small group or work in a larger group are super important for social norms, and the skills around collaboration and teamwork will take the learner beyond where they are right now. The E in target is for evaluation, and it's similar to recognition, but this is more formal. Recognition is around praise and incentives to continue their learning, but evaluation is more on the formal end where it's tests, quizzes, knowledge checks, so that learners get a real sense of how they're doing on a more formal standard. This is a way for your learner to show that they've mastered or are mastering the skills that you're teaching. These directly relate back to your learning objectives. This is why it's super important to make sure you set those out ahead of time. And make sure the learners understand those too. If your learners are clear on what the learning objectives are, they're more likely to try to meet those through the evaluation and through the learning process. It could also be helpful to share what the projects are or what the criteria are for evaluation at the start of class or at the start of the course so that your learners know what they're working toward. It's important for them to understand how they're being evaluated. The last T in target is time, and making sure you're allocating enough time and the appropriate amount of time to meet your learning objectives. Is the pace of instruction appropriate? Is it too fast? Is it too slow? Are you cramming too much information into a short period of time? Is there not enough information in the amount of time that's allocated? These are questions that you need to ask yourself when you're moving through the design process of your course, workshop, online education, or what have you. The best advice I can give you is to always have a buffer zone, because it always is going to take more time than you need. So I always plan for at least an extra 10-15 minutes per section for questions, for transition time, for technology issues, because I always like to allocate extra time for feedback or for the learners to engage with each other, because that time, even though it may be unplanned, is super valuable to the learning experience, and you can't really plan for that And I think when you overplan or you try to cram too much into a short period of time, you wind up losing out on some of that unplanned but super valuable time frame that you may not have gotten if you tried to cram too much, if that makes sense. If you take into account all aspects of the target model, task, autonomy, recognition, grouping, evaluation, and time, then you'll not only motivate your learners, but you'll increase their engagement and they'll stay focused and they'll want to keep coming back for more. And I would love to hear in the comments how you plan on using the target model and how you plan on increasing your learner engagement and motivation. So hit me up in the comments. If you like this video, don't forget to hit subscribe. I release new videos every week on tips, tools, and tutorials to help you master the science of educational content creation to make you a better instructional designer and create awesome learning content. I'll see you there.